Hey, it's Kay. Welcome back. So, before I actually start talking about books, I just wanted to say I couldn't figure out why my video quality was so poor. I was like, I'm recording in 4K. Yes, I use my iPhone, but I do make sure I record in 4K. I wasn't understanding what was happening. It turns out, I was editing my videos in iMovie, and at the end, when you export it into a file, you have to select like what size you want it to be. And I didn't know that it auto selected the worst quality. So I've been filming in 4K, and then when I actually edit and then upload my video, I've been uploading it in like 300 something like, oh my god, it was just so bad. And so I have figured that out, and I will start uploading them properly so that they can be as good as they look on. I didn't understand why on my I really didn't understand why on my computer they look so good. But when I post them, they didn't look good. And so now that I've figured that out, I will be posting videos in better quality. And I mean, hey, it's a learning curve. So thanks so much for watching my poor quality videos, and get ready for some better stuff. Now, as you could tell by this title, we're talking about Fourth Wing. I'm just going to hold it up for a second, and then when I actually edit this, I'll put in a picture in about a minute when I take this down. So really quick before I take this down, this book was so good that I actually ended up buying a physical copy. I originally read this book on Libby. I received a notification that they had a skip the line copy of it that I could read, and I was not going to read this book at all because I'm anti-hype books. I know that's a dumb take to have. I am aware my brain just refuses to read books that are hyped a lot. But my brain also doesn't like to wait for books, and none of the books that I have requested are available yet, meaning that I had to browse around for something that I could read in my free time that wasn't on my TBR, because for some reason I do not want to read my TBR right now. And so when this popped up and it was available right in the moment, I said, okay, I'll give it a go. And so I got it. I read it in literally one night. I got it around 5 p.m. on the 3rd, I think it was, the 3rd of September. And I finished it at like 1:20 a.m. So technically it went into the next day, but it was one night that I read this whole book in. And then it was so good that literally the next day I went out to Barnes & Noble and bought myself a physical copy, because I was like, I need to have this book. It's not going to be another instance of Crescent City or the or Ninth House where I don't follow the hype and then I end up reading it when it's a softback, a paperback, sorry. And then I regret it when I love the book and go to buy the second one, and then I have a paperback and then a hardcover for one series, because that's annoying, and we don't have the money to be buying multiple copies of a book right now. And so I went out and I bought it, and I'm so happy about this purchase. Getting right into it, I personally think that Fourth Wing is a strange combination of Divergent, because of the whole governing system and having to pick a specific, I don't remember what it's called, but they're essentially the factions of this book. And funnily enough, Violet is forced to go into the Dragon Rider faction. And it's very similar to Dauntless in the way that it seems to be portrayed. To even get into this faction, you have to pass a physical challenge, and then there's challenges that you have to partake in over a course of time, and only if you do those challenges and succeed will you be deemed worthy enough to join the faction officially. It was Divergent but good. So it was a mix of Divergent and then From Blood and Ash, but only in the sense that there's like a rebellion that the main character is not, or was not, aware of, and becomes enlightened of over the course of the story while being entangled in a romance situation. And then lastly, it's also a mixture of How to Train Your Dragon. And so just those three pieces of media all combined to form Fourth Wing. And it was fantastic. I loved every second of it. The part of me that's obsessed with How to Train Your Dragon was like, yes, we ride dragons now, let's do it. The part of me that loved Divergent when I was in high school is like, yes, factions but better, please tell me more. And then the part of me that likes From Blood and Ash, which is not a lot of me because that book is, I still couldn't really tell you what's going on in those books, you know? But the part of me that likes From Blood and Ash is like, please keep giving me the rebellions. Give me some spice while we're at it. And funnily enough, this book really follows, like, not plot wise, but character wise, it's very similar in like the trajectory that the relationships between the characters take, if that makes sense. I'll get into that more when I talk about spoilers, but for right now, we're gonna go with that. Moving right along, I loved this book. I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. This book had a lot of things that I typically hate in books. Cannot stand just a few things. It's so overdone and it's boring to read about one character just suddenly becoming that it factor that's needed to conquer the story and end it. It's boring, it's played out. I would love for something more exciting and interesting to happen. I want to see some struggle. I don't want them to suddenly learn what to do in their time of need. That's something I really don't like in books. So, the second thing that I really don't like in books is when there's confusion in the heroine's mind about who is the antagonist and who is her hero in the story. It's very frustrating when it's very obvious on the page that they're not being treated well, but they don't care, or when they're being treated so well, but that's their enemy, so they don't like them. It's hard for me to conceptualize how you could ever be confused about it. I cannot stand when I know how a book is going to end 20, 30 pages in. I hate it. And so, why did I give this book 5 stars anyways when it has all of those things? Well, I really liked the way that the chosen one, all powerful main character was done, because you do see that Violet struggles to learn how to use her powers, and she never actually officially learns how to use them in this book, at least from what I could gather. It appears as though she is just continually struggling. Even in like the final battles, she doesn't have a grip on her powers, and because of that, people suffer. Like, she has this power that should be able to like save everything, but she doesn't know how to use it, and when she tries to use it, she messes up. And I like that that actually impacts the story, and it wasn't just a she figures it out right when they need it type of thing. That happens in like Crescent City, and it happens in other books. It just happened in The Infernal Devices when I read those. That sudden, I know what I'm going to do and save everyone. It's so frustrating. It feels lazy when it happens, but this was done so well because that didn't happen, and maybe it'll happen in the next book, who knows. But it didn't happen in this one, and it made the book better, like watching her struggle and watching the consequences of her not learning how to control her power just yet. The second problem was when the main character doesn't understand who is supposed to be her antagonist and who is supposed to be her hero. So I typically hate that. My favorite part about this little love triangle situation that was going on between Violet, Xaden, and oh my god, what is his name? Dane, maybe? They're called quadrants. It is Dane. Like, Dane is her childhood best friend, and Xaden is the sworn enemy of her and her entire family. And so it's very apparent from the get go that this love triangle is going to be a thing. And boy, oh boy, do I love a love triangle. So I was all for it. And then you see the way that Violet is being treated by Dane and by Xaden, and I immediately understood and knew, like, cool, so this is who she's going to be with. And I'm not going to spoil who it was, but I was like, cool, this is who she's going to be with. It makes complete sense. And then when the actions of the characters proved that, actually, I'm kind of going to spoil it. They kind of spoil it in the description because it literally says that it doesn't even mention Dane in the description of this book. So that should tell you exactly who the romantic love interest is in this book. But the way that Xaden will help her while not helping her, if that makes sense. He like gives her advice and he supports her, but they're still like angry and don't like each other at the same time, and that's beautifully done. My absolute favorite thing is when an enemy is actually into you and is secretly like helping you but doesn't want to help you. It literally will make my ovaries explode, okay? Like that's it. Okay. It's done so well. And then Dane is supposed to be her best friend for all of time, but he can't seem to listen to her and understand what she wants. And he tries to make decisions for her all of the time. And he's very controlling and possessive. And that's not the behavior that we want in a relationship. And I really liked the fact that she stood up for herself. I also really liked that Violet does not just let him overstep. She does that first and she forgives him a lot for when he does it. And it's like, come on, girl. Like, when are you going to realize he keeps making the same mistake? Move on. But we love when a heroine puts an overstepping asshole in his place, okay? Like, yes, you put him in his place. He deserves it. And it makes me so happy to see someone growing into themselves and being able to stand up and be like, stop treating me like this. It's not okay. And so that's the reason why that negative turned into a positive for me. And then the last thing that I really don't like in books is predictability, right? This book was so predictable. I knew almost right away exactly how this book was going to end. Probably like 60 to 80 pages in, I was like, okay, cool, so this is probably going to be a thing, and so is this. I'll get into that in the spoilers in a minute, but just in case people don't want to be spoiled, it is a very predictable book. If you've read the 2 books that I mentioned, you'd also know exactly how this book ends. So it's not doing anything special with its plot lines and what's happening and developing throughout the novel, but it does things well. And the reason why I was okay with the predictability was 100% because of the characters and the relationships that were involved in this book. Without the characters, without the development that they had and the personalities that they had and the relationship between Xaden and Violet, the level of predictability would not have done it for me. It probably would have been the reason why I would give this book a bad rating, but the characters were developed so well and the plot was, while predictable, executed fantastically. And it was a page turner at the end of the day. So that predictability was something that I can excuse. Now, for the spoilers, just a few things that I wanted to touch on in particular about things. The main thing that made me like or not mind the all-powerful main character was 100% the fact that in that final battle that they have, she is unable to save her friend and she can't save the day and people die, and that's honest, and she gets hurt and almost dies. Like, that's honest, you know? It's not like all of their problems were solved because it suddenly clicked in her brain how to use her lightning. For the second thing, I don't have anything to spoil about the confusion emotionally with Violet about the triangle, because why spoil anything? It's already pretty clear who she ends up with. Kind of. I'm not going to spoil that part though. And then lastly, for the predictability. So like I said, about 60 to 80 pages into this, I knew immediately that either her dead brother or her dead father was going to be alive and helping the rebellion. It was just the fact that 2 people in her family were dead, and then it just didn't seem like plausible. I was like, oh, one of them is still alive some way, shape, or form. They keep talking about this rebellion. That's how books with rebellions work. I also knew, based off of that part, that most likely the current government that she resides under inside of Navarre, whatever. I knew that the current government was going to be one of the bad guys in this novel, because that's typically how it works. If there was a rebellion, usually the rebellion is being misconstrued because who writes history? The winners. And they're not going to say that they were the bad guys and they won. That's not how it works. And so I knew that this rebellion probably A, wasn't over, and B, that they were good guys and they had lost, and that the current government was one of the bad guys. And I mean, if you've read the book, you know. And then the last thing that I knew was that Xaden was part of the rebellion. It was a given. I mean, I really don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, but just the way that he was described and portrayed, it was so obvious to me that he was going to be a part of this rebellion. Chances are he wasn't going to tell her. That was probably going to come out either in this book or the next book, that he is a part of this rebellion and that everything that she knows isn't true, but that at the end of the day, the betrayal was going to be worse than the knowledge. You've read these books before. We all know how they end. That being said, this book was fantastic. The writing was perfectly done. The descriptions were incredible. The character relationships were amazing. There wasn't a single thing about this book that I did not like, even if it was something that I typically don't like. For some reason, Fourth Wing just does the right things and does the wrong things in the right way. So at the end of the day, this is a 5-star read. I'm very excited to be getting so many 5-star reads lately. I hope that you enjoy this book. You should definitely pick it up. I would recommend it so much. It is so good. I know I said that I put a picture up, and I am, but I just like holding it. It's so good. Please read it. All right. Y'all have a great day, okay? Bye.